Hello guys, welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be talking about some massive buffs to classes, nerfs to certain classes, and this video is going to be talking about the latest post-mythic balancing that people were waiting and expecting, and certain classes got nerfs. A lot of the popular classes, or a class that was exceedingly performing in the MDI summer split, has also received some of the nerfs, and we'll talk about all of this. And first of all, I just want to say I am staying up really late for this. This is probably my second or maybe even third monster that I'm having already. So I might be a little bit hyper but tired at the same time. So basically my usual self. So keep that in mind. But first of all, I said the rest of Shamans were gonna get buffs. I said this weeks ago. You can there is a Twitch clip that you can see. Let's roll the clip. Let's roll it right now. Okay. I actually don't have the clip because I couldn't stomach even going through my stream VOD, so I didn't find it. But I'm telling you, it's there. I predicted the buffs, and I'm happy to see Rest of Shamans getting some love finally. So first of all, there's quite a few underperforming classes that receive just flat out damage buffs, and we can see, or start off first of all with a Death Knight. Frost and Unholy both got their damage of all abilities increased by 5%. Now, this is to some extent warranted because if we go to the mythic performance of the DPS classes in Eternal Palace, you can see that Unholy Death Knight is literally the last class here, and you can see Frost Death Knight is not performing that well either. So a lot of the people, or a lot of DKs who are playing this game right now, will see this as a warranted buff and will see how much they're going to climb. But again, pretty good decision in my opinion in terms of how Blizzard is going to balance this. If we actually go and look at the, or at least look at the Mythic Plus performance for DKs right now in terms of the plus 15s, and that's what I feel where class balance kind of comes into effect. I know plus 15 might not be the, the top world Mythic Plus keys, but I feel this is a decent representation of how the melee classes are being represented at high-end, keystone dungeons. And you can see here that, again, Unholy and Frost are not the most popular specs. So across the board, DKs were quite poor in Raid and Mythic Plus environments. So Blizzard basically said, hey, we're gonna give you 5% buff. Makes sense. I'm pretty sure a lot of the DKs that are watching this video will agree with this, and they're kind of happy. We'll see how certain other classes that are close to DK performance that did not get their buffs. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of tears in the comments, and I really want to read all those comments because I feel few of the classes should have received buffs and they did not. So let's look at Warlocks. And Warlocks, the destruction spec, again, 5% flat increase. And if we look at the performance of Destruction, generally speaking, they're one of the lower classes. So you can see that this is the Raid performance, this is the Mythic Eternal Palace. They're not doing so well. You can see that overall Affliction has been doing pretty good in terms of the Warlock, or the most popular Warlock specs. So it's kind of nice to see that Blizzard is trying to even out, those pure DPS classes and making sure that their specs are doing pretty well. If you look at Mythic Plus, the same kind of story. If we look at the ranged DPS, Warlocks overall, at least the ranged balance in Mythic Plus, in the plus 15s, is actually not that bad. You can see a lot of the ranged are being represented. In terms of Warlocks, Demonology is by far the most popular, then you will see Afflictions, and then a very small representation of Destruction Warlocks. So I see this buff to Destruction as a very valid buff. I'm sure you'll agree. It's somewhat underperforming, so again, in my opinion, pretty nice job. Then we see the same exact thing again with Arms Warriors. Flat 5% buff to their damage. We go back to the Raid performance. You'll notice that Warriors, or Arms Warriors, are not doing too bad. They're kind of mid-tier. You see the Fury Warriors are actually destroying, and there's a lot of Warriors right now in terms of DPS who are re-rolling to Fury, and Fury is performing really well in a lot of the raid environments. You'll notice that a lot of the world first guilds actually used at least one warrior for a lot of the boss fights. So Fury is doing well. Arms, mid-tier, it's not too great. If you look at the Mythic Plus environment in terms of the melee DPS, Warriors Fury is not doing all that bad. You can see here 12% representation and a plus 15 keys. If you go to plus 20 keys, it dips down. Talk about Outlaw very, very soon. But again, Fury Wars are not doing too bad. But if you look at arms, overall, again, not a good representation. The Blizzard is kind of trying to even out some of the underperforming specs. And again, it makes sense. All of these buffs to these classes, it all makes sense. Now, before we're gonna go to the nerfs of the Outlaw Rogue, I want to kind of point out the classes that are gonna be crying in the class discords or in the comments, and maybe there is a reasons why they're going to be crying, because we're looking at the raid or mythic raid performance here. Arms Warriors received the buff, Frost DK received the buff, Unholy DK received the buff, Destruction Warlock received the buff. If we're basing our judgment on these statistics alone, and these statistics are pretty valuable because these are real life players. This is not, simulation results. These are players who go and do mythic content, and this is like an aggregate performance of how well they do in terms of 75 percentile. You notice that, at least at this moment, Retribution Paladin is kind of close there, Feral Jude is kind of close there, Windwalker Monk is probably the one I feel kind of really deserve the buff, and there's a lot of Windwalker Monks that are really angry about the lack of changes to their spec right now. And I'm sure a lot of Windwalkers are going to be angry, but I feel that Windwalkers didn't receive a buff because in Mythic Dungeon Summer Invitational, and this is the Summer Invitational right now, this is the classes or the specs that are being used by most of the top end Mythic Plus pushers, you'll notice that there's quite a few Windwalkers in certain of these compositions. So I feel Blizzard might be viewing this as, hey, I'm not sure if Windwalkers should get a buff because Windwalkers are doing pretty well in MDI, but in raid environments, they're pretty down. Again, you can also see mages there as well in terms of Frost and Arcane. They're not doing that hot in raid environments. So I really like to hear your opinion about the underperforming classes that probably should have received the buff. Because I know people are going to be always thinking like, the grass is green on the other side. Where are my nerfs? Or where are my buffs? I'll be waiting them for a long, long time. So again, I want to hear your opinion on this. Again, we're going to the big one right now, and that is Outlaw Rogue nerfs. And this is, again, a huge topic. I am quite certain there is a lot of people who are really happy about this because, people just prefer the underdog classes. They don't want a certain class dominating all of the environments. And I'm not talking about just Outlaw, but I'm talking about rogues in general. They've been so strong for a really long time. You can see that Blade Flurry now strikes nearby enemies for 30% of normal damage, was 45, so they're nerfing the AoE damage. And Outlaw provides insane amount of AoE damage. And Keep Your Wits About You, Azeroth trait now increases the chance of Sinister Strike to strike again by 3%, was 5%. So they're nerfing one of the Azeroth traits, and there is a good reason for this. If you go to Blood Mallet and see what Azeroth traits are amazing for Outlaw Rogues in terms of Azeroth, in terms of Hectic Ad Cleave fights, so that means AoE fights, and you can see that there's a winner in this. Keep Your Wits is far too strong, or at least simming really, really, really well in those AoE situations. So Blizzard is kind of looking at this, and to some extent it makes sense for an Azeroth trait not to be so overpowered, but to some extent there are so many other specs that have Azeroth traits that are far too good. So I'm not completely certain on this, but either way, AoE has been nerfed. Developers note, while multi-target cleave is an iconic strength of Outlaw Rogues, we felt that Blade Flurry is currently too strong, particularly in Mythic Plus dungeons. Likewise, Azeroth trait, Keep Your Wits About You, provided too much added value to their AoE rotation at only single instance of the trait. So most of the rogues or Outlaw Rogues would have at least just one of these, and it would be a huge, huge increase. This nerf, like developer note, is coming from Mythic Plus. Because if you look at Mythic Plus performance of Outlaw Rogues, and Rogues in general actually, they're one of the top picked classes in Mythic Plus environment, in plus 15 keys, in plus 20 keys. If we go to the MDI summer split as well, you can see that there's a whole lot of yellow in these compositions, a whole lot of yellow. And Blizzard might have been getting the feedback from a lot of players because MDI, to some extent, I made a previous video about this, is getting a little bit boring because it's all it's all the same composition. So maybe they're doing to spice things up in MDI, I'm not sure. Love to hear your opinion on this. I'm sure a lot of Outlaw Rogues are not happy about this. I'm sure all the people who don't play Outlaw Rogues are really happy about this because they don't want the king to be the king forever. Now, we're going to my favorite change, and this is healer changes. Restoration Shaman, like I mentioned, I really thought they were gonna get a buff, and they did. Healing Surge and Healing Wave, healing increased by 10%, amazing. The mana cost reduction is whatever, but the healing increase is, you know, any buffs are great. Healing Rain, healing increased by 20%. Riptide healing over time increased by 15. Wellsprings healing increased by 15. This is a bit of a weird change in terms of Wellsprings because I still feel it's gonna be somewhat of a niche talent because of the way they have to use it, the cooldown on it. I still feel that High Tide fits with the current Resto Shaman playstyle really well, where Chain Heal makes up for a lot of your healing. So that's very interesting again. I guess Blizzard doesn't want High Tide to be that powerful, but I still don't see Wellspring becoming the go-to talent yet. We'll have to see. So developers note, in general, Restoration Shamans are struggling with single target healing environments in Mythic Plus, dungeons and arenas. 100% agree. Resto Shaman single target healing is pretty bad, but there's a lot of other healers that struggle in single target healing departments. You can mention to some extent, you know, the priests in general, but I guess Blizzard doesn't want to buff this priest because they're already really strong in raiding environments. So I guess it's a good change for Mythic Plus because I mainly do Mythic Plus. So we're buffing some spells from their single target kit. At the same time, we also feel they aren't doing as well in particular areas where they should excel. Healing a large number of targets in a small area. I 100% get this because Resto Shaman niche is stacked healing. And there are certain fights in Eternal Palace where there is stacked healing. But even in those scenarios, Resto Shaman doesn't dominate. They don't become the best healers. Like, for example, if you look at the healing performance in general, yeah. So this is the Mythic Eternal Palace. You see there's one healer in terms of pure HPS is kind of dominating. And this is going to be another topic for later on. But you can see Resto Shamans are the bottom healers in terms of pure HPS. If we look at fights like Orgonzoa, or actually I'm looking at Queen's Court right now. If we look at Orgonzoa, there's a lot of stacked phases in this boss, and you can see it's kind of fitting to Resto Shaman toolkit, but at the same time they're not really dominating the healing. So I guess Blizzard wants, for these fights where Resto Shaman fits really well, where healing range should do a lot of healing, Resto Shamans should kind of dominate or be very strong. So I'm really happy for Resto Shaman buffs. I'll be completely honest with you, a lot of people have been saying a lot of bad things about Resto Shamans, but if you actually look at the number of public passes that are available for a lot of the end tier mythic bosses, again, Discipline Priest is very strong, Holy Paladin are very strong, but you can also see Restoration Shaman is probably the third most popular healer. Even if you look at fights like Zakul, where Shamans might not be that great in pure HPS healing, in terms of the public passes, they're still doing pretty well. So this buff I feel is gonna be pretty nice. I actually can't wait to dust off my Resto Shaman and try out some of the raid healing with it as well, and actually try out Mythic Plus healing to see the changes. I'm really happy about this. I really want to know your opinions about which classes should have been maybe nerfed, because a whole lot of people have been asking for this guy right here to get certain nerfs. I've been playing Holy Paladin for progression, and I honestly enjoy how overpowered they are, and I don't want the nerfs. But I'm sure all of the healers below here want this guy to fall. I want to hear your opinions on this. I want to hear on which DPS classes should have been buffed or maybe should have been nerfed. Are you happy about the Outlaw Rogue nerfs? Honestly, I am kind of happy with how Blizzard approached all of this. I kind of wanted to see more buffs. I'm not sure if I wanted to see Holy Paladin nerfs. I would love to hear your opinions. Let me know, guys. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next guide.